Welcome to Backbenchers. I hope everything is going well with you all and I hope you all are fine. So we were continuing and discussing with the playlist of plant physiology, and under that playlist we were talking about the chapter of absorption by roots. Today we are going to be discussing about the next portion of this chapter that we have, that is transportation, root pressure and forces contributing to ascent of sap. We are very close to be finishing the chapter. Make sure whatever doubts you're having, you just keep on writing them in the comment section. We are very close to the doubt class as well. We are going to be having the doubt class at the end of this chapter. Also, I would like to apologize to you all for my cracked voice. You see, I have caught a lot of cold from a lot of days, so that's why my voice is cracked, and I really apologize for that. I hope you all understand that. Let us continue with today's portion. First, let us quickly have a look into the division of the chapter. This was the first portion. We are done with this. This was the second portion. We have done that as well. Third portion is done too. Fourth portion is also done. Fifth portion is also done. In today's video, we are going to be discussing about this portion. That is the sixth portion. So this is the sixth portion. Now about this portion is slightly bigger than the rest of the portions, and that is why I have divided this single topic into two parts. So in today's video, we are going to be discussing about the part 1 of this particular topic, and we are going to be discussing only about root pressure and transportation in the part 1, and in the part 2 we are going to be discussing about the forces contributing to ascent of sap. And then at the last, we are going to be discussing about the experiments regarding transportation. Then, as I've said you all before as well, doubt class is there. Whatever doubts you're having, write it down in the comment section. Let us have a look into the questions from previous session, and then we will proceed with our topics today. So first question is, how are flaccidity and plasmolysis different? I've already discussed this thing in the previous topic. A very minute difference is there. Students tend to overlook it a lot of times, so make sure you go through the video and just know the points properly and then answer this question. And the second question is, what will happen if a plasmolyzed cell is placed in a hypertonic solution? Very easy question. I'm expecting that you all are known with the answer of this. Now let us move on with today's session. First, we are going to be discussing about root pressure. But before understanding root pressure, we are going to be taking the help of ascent of sap, and then we are going to be understanding root pressure. So what is ascent of sap? Now you all are known with the meaning of the word sap. We have discussed this word plenty of times in our previous portions, and you all know what sap is. Sap is nothing but a watery fluid which consists of dissolved water and minerals inside the vacuole of the plant cell. You all know that plant cells have large centrally located vacuole. Plant cells, let me write that point for you all. Centrally located vacuole is a very important point, because when you all will study animal cell and plant cell together, this point is going to be a difference between the two cells. So this is a very contrasting and very vivid and vital point. So make sure you remember this point while studying. Plant cells have very large centrally located vacuole, and the vacuole consists of the dissolved water and minerals. It is the vacuole that consists of the dissolved water and minerals. We're going to be seeing that through a diagram. Let me just share the diagram with you all as well. Just a second. Yes. Okay. Now let us have a look into the diagram. Yes. This diagram is a complete plant cell. It is showing some of the cell organelles. It is not important to just focus on the cell organelles now because we have to take care of the vacuole. So we can see that this thing is the vacuole. I'll highlight that for you all. This thing is the vacuole. And you can see it is almost nearly centrally located. This is the vacuole. And this vacuole consists of dissolved water and minerals. Vacuole consisting of dissolved water and minerals. Now, how is this ascent of sap phenomenon related to root pressure? Sap, so you all know the meaning of sap. What is sap? Sap is basically a watery fluid. What is ascent of sap? Ascent of sap is nothing but the upward movement of sap. The word ascent means upward or ascending. You know, when we say ascending, which means something is going upwards, something is moving upwards. So ascent of sap means the upward movement of sap. Ascent of sap means upward movement of sap, and sap means dissolved water plus minerals. So that was about ascent of sap. Now root pressure, coming to root pressure. Root pressure is simply the pressure that is required for completion of ascent of sap. So when continuous ascent of sap takes place during absorption by roots, during absorption process in plants, root pressure comes to action. So root pressure is that particular pressure which is required for ascent of sap, which is required for the upward movement of cell sap from the roots to the leaves. This process is vital as well and important to take place. Why? Because dissolved substances, absorbed substances from the roots have to be taken to the leaves so that the leaves can process and make the food for the plant. That is, they can carry out photosynthesis and then they can transfer the food to all the parts of the plant. So ascent of sap is very, very important to take place in plants because without that, plants might not be able to survive. So you can see in the definition here, root pressure is basically the pressure which is developed in the roots due to the continuous upward movement of cell sap through the cell to cell osmosis. That is all. So when you have noticed, we have discussed this a lot, when in the root cells things are transferred from one cell to another, so osmosis takes place. So continuous osmosis is taking place. Now let us consider a diagram like this. Let me draw that diagram for you all. This is the root part of the plant. Here cells are present like this. This is the bottommost cell. So this is going to transfer the dissolved substances from itself to the upper parts. Let me use another ink for that. This is the bottommost cell. And this substances, absorbed substances are moving like this upwards. With the help of osmosis, this movement is happening with the help of osmosis. But one thing you all can notice here, that there is only one way movement, that is only upward movement is taking place. That is continuous upward movement is taking place. Of what? Of the cell sap. And due to that a pressure is developing. This particular pressure is said to be root pressure. That is all you need to know about root pressure. Let me highlight few terms in this definition for you all. You all have to remember this thing, continuous upward movement of cell sap. through cell to cell osmosis is very, very important in this definition. Which helps in the ascent of sap is the major point that you have to mention in the definition of root pressure. Through the stem is called root pressure, simply root pressure. That is all about root pressure. So if you understand ascent of sap very easily, you all will be able to understand root pressure also very easily, because there is nothing hard in it understanding. Now root pressure causes two types of phenomena. What are those phenomena? Firstly, we have bleeding, and second thing is guttation. Okay, let me remove this thing for you all so that you can see the guttation part. Okay, so the first phenomenon is bleeding and the second phenomenon is guttation. We are going to be discussing about these two phenomena now. Before going to the definition of bleeding, first we will look into a diagram. We will look into a picture. Let's have a look into this particular picture. What can we see here? A plant stem has been given a cut. So this region is the cut on the plant cell. I'll write it here, cut in the plant cell. And when a cut is made in the plant cell, what we are observing is, we are observing a greenish watery fluid here. If you all can see where my pen is marking, I'm talking about this greenish fluid here. And the tube, inside the tube also, they're sucking this fluid to test the constituents of its fluid. Now, when they will test the constituents of its fluid, they will find that the constituent of this fluid and the cell sap inside the cell vacuoles are very similar, or we can say that it's basically the same fluid. That means that this is probably the cell sap that has come out from the cut. Now, this particular phenomenon is bleeding. So what is happening in this diagram is nothing but a phenomenon which is known as bleeding. Now, let us look into the definition of bleeding. So bleeding simply happens when a cut is made in the stem and cell sap comes out of it. Why does that happen? Let us read the definition now. When ascent of sap is happening under the presence of root pressure, so ascent of sap always happens under the presence of root pressure. At that point of time, what is happening? Water is moved to the stem. Continuous movement, upward movement of water is taking place, right? From the roots, water is moving slowly to the stem, and then ultimately to the leaves it will reach. That is what is written here. That time water is moved to the stem, and then eventually it is going to reach the leaves, where it will be processed and photosynthesis will be taking place. If a cut is made in the stem, then the cell sap is seen to leak through the stem. This particular phenomenon is known as bleeding. Plants do not have blood. Plants have cell sap instead. Human beings have blood. So if a cut is made in human beings, then blood flows. Similarly, when a cut is made in a plant stem, cell sap flows. Because for plants, their blood is cell sap. So for plants, their blood is in the form of cell sap. Very simple phenomenon. Simply we can understand this is basically a test of ascent of sap as well. So ascent of sap happens continuously in plants. We can say whenever we are making a cut in the stem, we can see some of the cell sap is leaking. Some of the cell sap is leaking through the stem, and we can see the cell sap outside. That particular phenomenon is known as bleeding. Nothing else is there to know. Very simple phenomenon. Now let us have a look into the phenomenon of guttation. Let us have a look into the definition first, and then we will understand it with the help of the diagram. What does the definition says? Sometimes the root pressure is very high in plants. This was supposed to be root. Sorry about the error though. Sometimes the root pressure is very high in plants even after carrying the cell sap to the leaves. Due to the high pressure, the cell sap is forced to come out of the leaves in the form of water droplets appearing on the margin of the leaves. This phenomenon is known as guttation. It is a very similar phenomenon to bleeding. We can say very similar to bleeding. The only difference that is here is there is the presence of excessive root pressure, excessive high root pressure. We all can see here. And unlike the bleeding phenomenon, here the cell sap is going to appear as droplets, where on the margin of the leaves. Look at this diagram. It will help you understand better. See, when guttation is going to take place, it is going to look somewhat like this in leaves. This portion is the margin of the leaves. I'm marking it. These are the margin of the leaves. And cell sap, this is basically the excessive water you can say, or the excessive cell sap you can say. This is not the cell sap. We can say that this is the water droplets. Excessive water droplets are pushed out of the cell even if the water is reached to the leaves. Then also excessive water is pushed, and when it is pushed, guttation takes place, and guttation takes place in the form of water droplets which appear on the margin of the leaves. So let me just mention that for you all in the diagram. These areas are the margin of the leaves. They are the leaf margins, and these are the water droplets. Simply, that is what is called as guttation. So when the root pressure is too high in plants, even after carrying the cell sap to the leaves, even after the cell sap is reached to the leaves, that pressure continues to be there. And due to that high pressure, what happens is excessive water is pushed out of the leaf cells. Excessive water is pushed out of the leaf cells in the form of water droplets. And the water droplets appear on the margin of the leaves. This phenomenon is known as guttation. Let us have another example. This diagram will help you understand in a lot better way. These areas are the leaf margins. I am marking it all for you. These are the leaf margins, and water droplets are going to appear only on these areas. These are the excessive water which is pushed out of the cell due to the presence of excess, or you can say extreme high extreme root pressure. That is all about guttation. That was all about root pressure. So root pressure is simply the particular amount of pressure which is required or which is developed in roots in cells of the plants due to continuous movement of ascent of sap. Now we are only left with one more topic to be discussed in today's part 1 video, which is transportation. We'll quickly discuss about transportation. It's a very small topic, and then we are going to be ending today's video. Okay, transportation, we have discussed about transportation when we were talking about the need for absorption of water in plants. In our first portion of the chapter, in our introductory class, we discussed about this transportation point. And if you all remember that point, we discussed that transportation takes place of two types. Transportation is of two types. One, water and minerals from the soil to the leaves, and another is prepared food, transportation of prepared food from the leaves to the various parts of the plant. Now in the first point, that is transportation of water and minerals from the soil to the leaves, now you all can say that root pressure is involved. Root pressure involved, why? Because it is developed due to the continuous movement of ascent of sap, and we can also write here ascent of sap. Root pressure involved due to ascent of sap. Let me write it in that way for you all. Root pressure involved due to ascent of sap. That is all. And in the second point, transportation of prepared food from the leaf to the various parts of the plant. That is after photosynthesis. When photosynthesis is done, the prepared food is transported from the leaves to the various parts of the plant equally and evenly distributed. Now, transportation is done by two vascular bundles or by two tissues, and that is the new part that we are going to be knowing. You all have studied about xylem and phloem in your junior classes, and xylem and phloem are together basically referred to as the vascular bundles. Why they refer to as vascular bundles? Because they help in the transportation of substances in plants. Simply all you need to remember is because they help in transportation of substances in plants. That is why transportation of substances. That is why they are referred to as vascular bundles together. Let us have a look into xylem and phloem. So this is a xylem picture, and then this is a phloem picture. Phloem has sieve tubes. These things are known as sieve tubes. Okay, let me change the color of the ink. This is xylem and this is phloem. Phloem is carrying food particles. You can see these are the food particles, and therefore phloem has sieve tubes. These things are sieve plates for the passage of food molecules. And in case of xylem, these things are water molecules, and here sieve plates are absent. Xylem carries water and minerals from the root cells to the leaves. Okay, here's a spelling mistake. This was supposed to be leaves, where they are used in the process of photosynthesis. Very important point. I'll highlight that for you all. Xylem carries, okay, sorry. Xylem carries water and minerals from the root cells to the leaves, where they are used in the process of photosynthesis. And after photosynthesis has taken place, phloem comes into action. Phloem then carries the prepared food from the leaves to the different parts of the plant and distributes it. Here one point you add when you will write in phloem, you add one more point here, which is distributes it evenly. So let me just write it down here. So this action is going to be here. Action of phloem is going to take place after photosynthesis. To take place photosynthesis, xylem is helping, and after photosynthesis, it's phloem's work. And phloem carries the prepared food from the leaves to the different parts of the plant and distributes it evenly. Distribution. That is all about xylem and phloem. And by that we finished today's portion. That was all about the part 1 of today's portion. Stay tuned for part 2. It is going to be coming soon. I am actually very sorry about the inconveniences that are caused, because there have been a lot of delays in the videos. I'll make sure I'll finish the syllabus, I'll finish this chapter as soon as possible. Till then, stay happy, stay safe, take care of yourselves. Peace.